we tell our story. So I asked him if he would make an exception and come on to this. Tell your friends to come listen to this right now, because this gentleman's going to teach you how to create your perfect presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the GoPro Challenge, Mr. Pat Quinn. Pat, go ahead. Take it from there.
Hey, thanks, Eric. It is a thrill to be here. If we haven't had a chance to meet before, I am Pat Quinn, and I actually didn't get my start as a professional speaker. I got my start as a professional magician and worked magic for 10 years professionally. Then I decided I needed to get a real job, and I became a public school teacher. I taught high school math for 12 years. During that time, I picked up an advanced degree in how adults learn, and so I really bring two things to the table today. The first is a little bit of stagecraft from my years of doing magic, but the second is a real understanding of how adults listen and how adults hear you when you're talking to them. I'm hyper-focused, not on you, but on the person you're talking to. Whether you're talking to one person across the table at Starbucks, whether you're talking to one person on the telephone, or whether you're talking to a small group of people on a Zoom call or in a living room, or whether you get the opportunity to present to a larger group of people, what you say and how you say it makes all the difference in the world. And so I'm here to talk to you today, not just to tell you to tell your story, but I'm going to show you exactly how to tell your story, because I only have one measuring stick of success. My measuring stick of success is not that people come up to you afterwards and say, wow, you're a really good speaker. My measuring stick of success is not that you get an email the next day that says, hey, you're really fun to listen to. My only measuring stick of success is that whoever you're talking to, one person, 3 people, or 50 people, whoever you're talking to wants to take the next step with you, wants to engage further with you. What is that next step? It could be a phone conversation. It could be, here's a video to watch. It could be, come to this event with me. It could be, sign up to be on my team. It could be to buy my product. You get to pick what the next step is. But if you want the maximum number of people to take that next step with you, and you want to do it all without ever being salesy or pushy or slimy, then this next 20 minutes is just for you. I've been fortunate enough over the last 10 years to work with some of the greatest speakers in the world. We've worked with Damon John from Shark Tank, Grant and Tony and Dean and Michael Hyatt, and household names that you've heard every single day. But most of the people that I work with are not professional speakers. Most of the people that I work with would not even consider themselves speakers. Most of the people that I work with are business owners, just like you, who want to grow their business, attract new clients, grow their team members, and be able to have those team members duplicate the successful things that they're doing. And the key to all of that is communication. The key to all of that is what we call your signature talk. What you say when you have an opportunity, whether you have 3 minutes on the phone, 15 minutes in a meeting, 25 minutes if you're on a podcast or get an opportunity to present, what you say about what you do and how you do it makes all the difference in the world. And so we're going to break that down today. Your signature talk has 4 parts. I'm going to focus on the first one of those 4 parts, which is your opening heart story. But before we get there, we need to get clarity. We need to get clarity on 2 big questions. The first question we need clarity on is, what is the problem that you solve? See, when I talk to most people about their products or about their business opportunity, they don't talk to me about a problem that they solve. They talk to me about a specific product or service. They talk to me about a business opportunity. But here's the thing, people aren't sitting around waiting for products. I've never walked down the street and had people ask me, do you have any products? Do you have any products? Do you have any products? People are actually sitting around with problems. And they're waiting for somebody who has a solution to their problems. And so one question you need perfect clarity on is, what is the problem that you solve for other people? And you're actually probably going to have 2 of these. You're going to have one problem that your product solves and one problem that your business opportunity solves. Okay? And you don't want to confuse the 2, and you don't want to share those 2 with somebody at the same time. You want to do them sequentially. Now, What is the problem that your product or service solves? Here's the thing. I know some of you right now are thinking, it solves all problems. That is a terrible answer because nobody is sitting around with all problems. Okay? You're sitting around with specific problems and you're waiting for somebody to say, I have a solution to that problem. And if you can name that problem, and here's the hardest part, you have to name it language of. You've read all the brochures, you've read the website, you've been trained, you know the research behind your product or service. And when that happens, you start to change your language. You start to use different words. One of the hardest things for you to do is to remember what words you used to describe the problem before you became so smart about solving the problem. But if you can remember that, and use those words, and the same is true for joining your team or for joining your company, or for becoming a distributor. The same is true. You know a bunch of words now that you didn't know then. What problem did you have then? What did you call it then? I hate my job. I'm tired of the 9 to 5. I don't have freedom. I don't have income. What was the problem? How did you describe it? And what simple language did you use to describe it? You get those words right. By the way, you'll know you have those words right because the person you're talking to will immediately begin nodding their head and leaning into you. It happens online, it happens in person. When you state the problem in the language of the consumer, when you state the problem in the language that the person you're speaking to recognizes, like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that last night. Oh my gosh, I was just talking to my spouse about that last night. It's like you're living rent-free in their heads, but they recognize it immediately and they unconsciously go like this and lean into you. It happens every time. And so the first question you need clarity on is, what is the problem that I solve for my audience? And the second question you need clarity on is, who is the audience I solve it for? I know you think your opportunity and your product is perfect for every living human being in the world. And you might get there one day. But let's start with the lowest hanging fruit. Let's start with the people who you'd get the fastest ROI, the biggest bang for the buck. Let's start with the people that look like you, sound like you, act like you, and have experienced life like you. Why? Because you already speak their language. You're already trusted by them because you're like them. And so when you get clarity on these two issues, what is the problem actually solving? And remember, you'll have two of these. One of these for the product or service, and one of these for joining your team, becoming a distributor. What is the problem that solves? And who do you solve it for? When you have clarity on those two issues, it's actually really easy to make a great presentation that isn't salesy, but converts at a super high rate. When you don't have clarity on those two issues, and some of you are going to recognize yourselves right here, when you don't have clarity on those two issues, you can talk a lot, but you don't get a lot of results. You can make a lot of asks, but you don't get a lot of results. And part of it goes back to not having clarity on those two issues. All right, once you have clarity on those two issues, it's time to put together your presentation. And the first of the 4 parts of that presentation are to tell your story. It's the opening heart story, an opportunity for you to connect. Do not dive right into your products. Do not dive right into your business opportunity. Start by connecting. Start by telling a story. You have a story to tell, and it can change lives. I believe every person listening to this right now has a story to tell, and there are people out there who need to hear it because they need help. They may need help with something that your product solves. They may need help with their skin, and you offer skincare products. They may need help with their finances, and you offer financial products. And they may need help with their health, and you offer nutritional supplements or exercise programs. They need help, and you telling your story will change their life. Maybe there's people who need help by needing a business opportunity. They're stuck in a job that they hate. They don't have enough income. They need to help their parents or their kids. They need help. And you have a story to tell. Probably 2 different stories, but you have a story to tell. I'd love for you to have one great story about your product and one great story about your business opportunity. if you believe that you have a story to tell that changes lives, if you believe that you have a story to tell that will help others, why don't you type into the comments right now, I have a story to tell. Type it right into the comments right now and put as many explanation points on it as you need to convince yourself and the world I have a story to tell. Because right now, I'm going to show you exactly how to tell that story. And here's the thing. Oh, did you see what I did there? I Scooby-Dooed you. What's a Scooby-Doo? Hey, when great speakers have something really important to say, they don't pound the podium and say, this is really important. When great speakers have something really important to say, they don't say, listen to this, write this down, this is really important. When great speakers have something really important to say, they simply look left, look right, and drop their heads about 6 inches. And the audience will unconsciously lean in and listen more closely to what they have to say. Here's what I want you to know. If you tell your story in the way that I'm going to tell you your story, this story right now, you'll never be salesy. You'll never actually have to sell anything. Just telling your story will get people to ask you, get people to approach you, get people to beg you to show them how you did it. I want to show you a technique called the 3-act play. The 3-act play is called the 3-act play because there are 3 acts. We'll call this one Act 1, we'll call this one Act 2, and we'll call this one Act 3. Just made those up on the spot. All right, we want 3 parts. This, by the way, only takes 2.5 minutes to do. You can always make it longer, but I don't know why you would. It only takes 2.5 minutes. Act 1 is the before. Okay. Act 1 is what your life was like before. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds to tell us what your life was like before. And so before you discovered this product, before you joined this company, what was your life like? And in the best 3-act plays, you're not going to take a long time to do this. In the best 3-act plays, you're going to boil it down to 3 specific characteristics, okay? And so you're going to tell us a little bit about what your life was like before. So before, 2 years ago, I was not sleeping well at night. I woke up the next day more tired than when I went to bed. And honestly, my love life wasn't very good. Okay, those are 3 characteristics and 60 seconds about what your life was like before. That's the first act. The second act is what we call the pivot. The second act is when things change, and you get 30 seconds to talk about the pivot. Now, when you're telling the story of your product, I don't recommend you name the name of the company of your product in the pivot. I would just say, then I changed my morning routine, or then I changed some of the vitamins that I took, or then I changed what I was using as my morning makeup routine, or then I changed something. Tell us what you changed. Don't be extremely vague, but I wouldn't name the company at this point. I would just say, then I made a change, and talk to us about that change and what it was like. And now we're going to get to the third act. The third act is the after, or the now, depending upon how long ago this story is from. And you get 60 seconds to talk about what your life is like now. And here's the best 3-act play. The best 3-act play will actually boil that down specifically to just 3 characteristics. And in the best 3-act plays, this characteristic became this characteristic, this characteristic became this characteristic, and this characteristic became this characteristic. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I have a product, and my product makes you healthier, okay? And so my product could be some nutritional supplements. I have some nutritional supplements. First thing I'm going to do is tell you, 2 years ago, man, I woke up one day and I didn't even want to get out of bed. I was tired all the time. Even if I slept for like 10 hours, I was tired. In the middle of the day, brain fog. In the middle of the day, I wanted nothing more than to take a nap. And I'm telling you, I didn't have any energy for my wife and energy for my kids. I wasn't the dad or the husband that I wanted to be. Then a friend of mine introduced me to this new supplement. And I didn't change everything. I didn't change my diet that much. I still eat too much steak and go to McDonald's too often. I didn't change my exercise too much. But I did change what I take every morning. And I drink a shake now every morning. And it's delicious. And I love it. Let me tell you about my life now. My life now, instead of not wanting to get out of bed, I don't have to set an alarm anymore. I wake up with full energy. Instead of having brain fog in the afternoon, I am my most productive all afternoon. I never have that lull in the afternoon like some people have. And instead of having no energy for my wife and my kids, I have plenty of energy to be the dad that I want to be and the husband that I want to be. Now, here's how this works. There's two ways that you can blow this. But here's how it works. If this describes what the person you're talking to is like now, and this describes what the person who you're talking to aspires for, then they will pay you anything for the pivot. They will beg you for the pivot. They will ask you and cry for you for the pivot. Now, there's two ways that you can get this wrong. One way you can get this wrong is if this doesn't describe the person that you're talking to. And so if I'm giving you the story I just told you, and you're not tired in the morning, and you have plenty of energy all day, and you're not a dad or a husband, and you have plenty of energy for everything, well, then this isn't going to work. And if I say, now I have lots of energy, now I have great concentration, and now I'm the dad and the husband that I want to be, or the parent that I want to be, if that's not what you want, like if you don't want that, if you just want to sit around and be tired all day, and you don't want to be a good dad or a good parent, well, it's not going to work. But if this describes what you are now, and this describes where they want to be, they will run over mountains. They will push through walls to get this. So that's a product story. Now watch the exact same technique for the business opportunity. I remember my life 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I had two young kids, and I knew I had to put them through college. They were like talking about college, and I was like, you don't want to go to college, kids. You don't want to go to college. They're like, yeah, we want to go to college, but we didn't have any money saved for college. And I said to my wife, we got to do something. And I was like, we had no money saved. Like we were barely able to pay our bills. And my parents were not as healthy as they were, and I would have loved to have helped them out, but I didn't have any extra money to help them out. And that's the thing. And then one of my friends, Tony and Sarah, they introduced me and showed me this great opportunity. And I got to tell you, I didn't think I'd heard some stuff, I'd heard that, you got to be salesy, you got to call on all your friends, and you got to do a bunch of stuff that I didn't want to do. And I'd had people approach me before, and they kind of showed me a different way. They showed me a way that was different. And has it made a difference in the world today? Today, I'm happy to announce that both of my kids have applied for and are going to college, and they're going to graduate from college with no debt. They're going to graduate from college debt-free. We have money to pay the bills, and we're actually saving for retirement for the first time in our lives. And my parents did so much for me growing up, and now it's so nice to be able to do things for them. It's so nice to be able to give back to them and know that they're going to be taken care of in the same way that they took care of me in my moment of greatest need. And so if this kind of describes you, and this kind of describes what you want, then I know what you're doing right now. Here's the thing. If you do this correctly, you never have to make a sale, because people are going to say, well, what was it? Tell me what they told you. And I'm telling you, this works on social media. If you want people to do anything, if you want people to just watch a video, just be like, this is what I was like, then I watched this video, this is what I was like now. People are going to be like, show me the video. If you want to get people to go to an event, like I had a network marketing business, and I had a lot of energy, but no customers. I had some product sales, but nobody joining my team. And I was starting to get all my friends and relatives angry at me. And then I attended GoPro for the very first time. Now, I don't just have energy, I have revenue. I don't just have buyers, I have team members, and my family loves me because I took them all to Hawaii last year on a vacation. And so if this looks like you now and you want to look like this, GoPro, come to GoPro. It's a simple 3-act play. You can use it to get people to do anything. Just make the anything that you want them to do the pivot. And that is how you tell your story. Now, let me tell you 2 other things about stories, and then I want to give you a great bonus for people who are going to buy tickets at any ticket level for GoPro. First thing I want to tell you about stories is the best stories are simple. The best stories don't take 10 minutes to tell, and the best stories aren't like, then it got better, then it got worse, then it got better, then it got worse, then I got sick, and then I got better. Like, they don't have these monster up and down and up and down. That might be good for a 3-hour movie, but that's not good listening to a person tell you a story. We want the simplest emotional line possible. I'm talking about, like, here's the emotional line I'm talking about. Things were bad, and then they got good. Like, that's the story I want you to tell. That's how simple it should be. Or, I lost things, and then I got them back. And this is the point that you should focus on. So the best stories are simple. And here's the second thing I want to tell you about stories. The best stories are ordinary. The best stories are not like, I got cured from the rarest disease of all time, or I got the biggest streak of bad luck in 60 years. No one has ever had all 10 of these bad things happen to me, and neither will you. You know, I actually coach someone who climbed to the top of Mount Everest. I coach someone who's been to the top of Mount Everest, and when he tells that story, how many other people in the room can relate to him? None. But I coach another person, and he tells a story about arguing with his spouse about whether the toilet paper should come out over the top of the roll or under the bottom of the roll. When he tells that story, how many other people in the room can relate to that? Every person in the room. What if we judged our stories, not based on how many people come up to us afterwards and like, that's an amazing story? What if instead we judged our stories based on how many people came up to us afterwards and said, that same thing happened to me? See, your best story for both your product and your best story for your opportunity that you give to other people to become distributors and join your team, your best stories are ordinary stories, stories that are just like other people's stories. And so I don't want you to ever have story envy. I want you to tell the simplest story you can, and I want you to be able to do that as simple as possible. Let me give you one last example of the full 3-act play. For years, I struggled to remember my stories. Funny things would happen to me, and I knew I was going to go on social media, but then I couldn't remember those funny things. And I knew as those things were happening, there were teaching moments that were happening, but I couldn't remember them, so I would lose my stories. When it come time to give a presentation, it took me forever to write the presentation because I had to always start with a blank sheet of paper. And because of that, I was an ineffective communicator, and my business didn't grow very fast. And I thought to myself, well, why isn't there one place online to store all of my stories? What if there was one place online to store all of my stories? Because I had mine on Post-it notes, and I had mine on cocktail napkins. Then finally somebody gave me a story journal, and I started putting my stories in a story journal. But the story journal wasn't always with me, so I still had Post-it notes and napkins, and I jammed those into my story journal. I was one strong wind away from losing all of my stories. And I thought, why isn't there one place to store your stories online? And I couldn't find one, so I made one. I made a tool called storylink.com, storylinq.com. It's one place in the cloud to store all of your stories. You can enter your stories and title them and categorize them and store them so that anytime you need to give a presentation, you can simply go and say,